What is truth?
Inside, the questioning began. The high priest asked Jesus about his disciples and his teaching.
Tell us about your disciples and your teaching.
But Jesus did not respond defensively.
I have spoken openly to the world. I have always taught in synagogues and in the temple where all Jews come together. I have said nothing in secret. Why do you ask me? Ask those who heard me.
It was an appeal to truth and public witness. There were no hidden doctrines, no secret uprising. At that response, one of the officers standing nearby struck Jesus with his hand.
Is that how you answer the high priest? If what I said is wrong, bear witness about the wrong. But if what I said is right, why do you strike me?
There is no retaliation, only reason, only truth. Meanwhile, Luke tells us that Peter followed at a distance. Jesus was inside under examination. Peter remained outside, close enough to watch, far enough to protect himself. The trial had begun, not only for Jesus, but for his disciple as well. While Jesus stood inside under interrogation, Peter stood outside in the courtyard. John tells us that another disciple, known to the high priest, gained access to the courtyard and brought Peter in. It was cold. A charcoal fire had been made. Servants and officers stood warming themselves. Peter stood with them, close to the fire, close to the enemies of Jesus. The first question came from a servant girl at the door.
You also are not one of this man's disciples, are you?
Peter answered simply,
I am not.
The night deepened. As Jesus was questioned inside, Peter was questioned outside. A second time, someone recognized him.
You also are not one of his disciples, are you?
Again, he denied it.
I am not.
Then a third voice, a relative of Malchus, the servant whose ear Peter had cut off.
Did I not see you in the garden with him?
The accusation grew more specific. Peter denied it again.
Man, I do not know what you are saying!
And immediately, the rooster crowed. Luke records a moment of piercing detail. The Lord turned and looked at Peter. No recorded words, just a look. And Peter remembered the saying of the Lord, that before the rooster crowed that day, he would deny him 3 times. He went out and wept bitterly. The disciple who had drawn a sword in the garden now faced the weakness of his own fear. Inside, Jesus remained faithful under pressure. Outside, Peter collapsed under it. The trial of the Messiah continued, and the night had not yet reached its darkest hour. Through the night, Jesus remained in custody. Luke tells us the men who were holding him mocked him as they beat him. They blindfolded him and demanded, "Prophesy, who is it that struck you?"
Prophesy, who is it that struck you?
The one who sees all things was struck by those who refused to see. When day came, the assembly of the elders gathered, both chief priests and scribes. Jesus was brought before their council. This was no longer a private interrogation. It was an official proceeding. They demanded clarity.
If you are the Christ, tell us.
If I tell you, you will not believe. And if I ask you, you will not answer.
Then he made a declaration that cut to the heart of their authority.
But from now on, the Son of Man shall be seated at the right hand of the power of God.
It was a reference to divine enthronement, authority beyond their court, beyond Rome, beyond earthly judgment. They pressed him further.
Are you the Son of God, then?
And he said to them,
You say that I am.
That was enough. What further testimony do we need? We have heard it ourselves from his own lips.
The verdict was formed, but under Roman rule they could not execute him. Their decision now had to be carried to the governor. The religious court had condemned him. Next, the political power would examine him. The night of denial had ended. The morning of sentencing had begun. The whole company rose and brought Jesus before the Roman governor. His name was Pontius Pilate. The religious leaders did not enter the governor's headquarters so that they would not be defiled before the Passover. Instead, Pilate went out to them. The irony was profound. They sought ritual purity while delivering an innocent man to death. Their accusations were political.
We found this man misleading our nation, forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar and saying that he himself is Christ, a king.
The charge had shifted. Before the council, it was blasphemy. Before Rome, it was treason. Pilate brought Jesus inside and questioned him directly.
Are you the king of the Jews?
Jesus answered with a question of his own.
Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me?
Pilate responded with distance.
Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you over to me. What have you done?
Then Jesus spoke words that defined the nature of his mission.
My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting, that I might not be delivered over. But my kingdom is not from here.
This was not denial of kingship. It was clarification of its source. Pilate pressed further.
So you are a king?
Jesus replied,
For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth.
Truth stood before political authority. Pilate responded with a question that echoes through history.
What is truth?
He found no guilt in him.
I found no guilt in him.
But finding no guilt would not be enough. The pressure from the crowd was building. The governor hesitated, and the next turn in the trial would test both justice and courage.
Pilate heard that Jesus was a Galilean. He asked whether the man belonged to Herod's jurisdiction.
Is this man a Galilean? Then he belongs to Herod's jurisdiction.
Learning that he did, Pilate sent him to Herod, who happened to be in Jerusalem at that time. This was Herod Antipas, ruler of Galilee. Luke tells us that Herod was very glad to see Jesus, not because he sought truth, but because he had long desired to see him perform a sign. He had heard about him. Now he wanted a spectacle. Herod questioned him at length, but Jesus gave him no answer. The silence was deliberate. Before Pilate, he had spoken of truth. Before Herod, he said nothing. The chief priests and scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him. Herod, disappointed and frustrated, treated him with contempt. Along with his soldiers, they mocked him. They arrayed him in splendid clothing, a parody of royalty, and sent him back to Pilate. Luke notes something subtle but significant. Herod and Pilate, who had previously been at enmity with each other, became friends that very day. The trial of Jesus had united rival powers, but not in justice, in rejection. The king stood silent before earthly rulers and was sent back again to the governor who had already found no fault in him. The pressure was mounting. The decision could no longer be deferred. Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people. He stated his conclusion plainly.
You brought me this man as one who was misleading the people. And after examining him before you, behold, I did not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither did Herod.
2 rulers, 2 examinations, 1 verdict, no guilt. Pilate proposed a solution, a custom during the feast. 1 prisoner could be released. There was another man in custody. His name was Barabbas. John tells us he was a robber. Luke adds that he had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, a rebel, a violent offender. Pilate presented the choice.
Whom do you want me to release for you? Jesus or Barabbas?
The crowd answered with one voice, "Away with this man, and release to us Barabbas." Pilate appealed again.
What shall I do then with Jesus?
The response intensified. A third time, Pilate asked.
What evil has he done?
He found no basis for the sentence of death, but the voices grew louder. The demand became relentless. Luke concludes with chilling clarity. Pilate decided that their demand should be granted. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, the one they asked for, and he delivered Jesus over to their will. The innocent was condemned, the guilty was released. An exchange had taken place, and the path to Golgotha was now unavoidable. And so the tension in the governor's hall continued to grow. The accusations had been spoken. The crowd was restless, and Pontius Pilate now faced a decision that would echo through history. Standing before him was a man unlike any other, calm, silent, unafraid. Pilate searched for answers. He listened to the accusations, but something about this prisoner troubled him deeply. Then, in a moment that would echo across centuries, Pilate asked a question that humanity is still asking today. What is truth?
What is truth?
What did Pilate really mean? Was he searching for truth or avoiding it?
What is truth?
In the next part of this story, we will step deeper into the trial and witness the powerful exchange between Jesus and the Roman governor. If you want to see what happens next, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss the next episode. Because the trial is not over yet, and the road to the cross is still unfolding. Thank you for watching, and may the truth of this story continue to inspire your faith.